first thing if I was singing, probably ever. Because, you know, that's what you do, sing at karaoke, isn't it? My mind.
Oh, wow.
That's it. Yeah, okay, that's what you get.
Did we get that, guys?
Just looking at that wee red light that says recording. That's excellent.
All right, we're good. All right, thank you.
After our Christmas do, Mark.
Thanks, Sean. Over to you.
Well, thank you, Chair. Just about to say, we come to you every year for approval for the allocations under the major event sponsorship funding policy that guides it. Normally, we would have been a few months earlier. However, once again, a track record of this meeting about the impact of COVID on some of our schedules. It also wasn't just COVID itself, it was also the ability for organisers of events who are affected by COVID to actually have a bit of time to reflect and recast their thinking of what they can put forward in terms of their programs for the coming year. The application of the major event sponsorship fund is governed by a policy document, which is included in the papers that you have, and it is very much guided by key criteria that are within the document that talk a lot about economic benefit, value add, exposure benefit for the city. So it's not, strictly speaking, like a community grant type approach. That said, the requirement under our committee orders there is that this committee consults with the community committee on the applications that have come forward, and that actually has happened in an informal way by a Zoom with the community committee and some members of this committee, which helped guide the final paper that you have in front of you today, seeking approval. There is, I just point out to note that some approvals are coming to you on a 1 year basis, some on a 3 year basis, and some for advanced years, which is sort of normal as we try to give certainty to some of the event organisers about ongoing support for their events. I would stress, though, that in all cases, they must deliver the event, the schedule, deliver the deliverables or outcomes that were promised in their application effectively, and report accordingly. And if they don't do that, then there's not an automatic rollover of sponsorship the following year. And they're all very, very clear that if they don't hit the mark in terms of our requirements under the contracts we issue, that the resolution here today for second or third year won't necessarily be forthcoming without having actually come through for a further application if they wish. The other, yes, so look, I think I should just perhaps leave it at that. We only have 2 of the applications that have come through that we are recommending be declined, and they both relate to the Waikato Shows Trust application in 2 instances. So happy to hand it back to you, Chair.
Thanks. I'm just going to let Councillor Mark also just speak to this, because we've worked as a collab between the 2 committees, possibly Councillor Wilson, just in terms of why it's landed with the current recommendation. So, Mark.
Yeah, I'll go very quickly. Thank you. Thank you, mate. Yeah, it was a really good collab, I figured, because there's a lot of crossover with community and the ED in particular in the space. Just speaking alongside Sean with the multi-year funding, you'll notice that some of them we allocated perhaps a less quantum, but with the regularity of multi-year funding, that money is actually more valuable to them. So we consider that to be a better use of this funding. There was some discussion around the show trust, which I'll probably ask you a few more questions on a wee bit later on, Sean, regards that. Yeah, I just want to thank the committee, because we had a really good meeting after Sean's recommendations, tweaked a couple of things, and this is what the result is.
Yeah, and I'll just add, the Boon was one of those examples where they kind of fell out of scope of our 2 policies, and this is what we had last year. So they're in here, but we've given them multi-year, but with a lesser quantum to try and create some longevity. So that's sort of where that's landed. Councillor Wilson, did you want to add anything?
Oh, look, I just want to add the fact that the amount of collegial work that is happening around this council table is incredibly exciting and unique, and this collab is an example of that working. And I just want to say that I've really enjoyed being able to be involved and work between committees, getting a really good outcome. And I have to thank Mayor Paula for laying that foundation from day one. I don't recall ever seeing it in the 20 years that I've been in and out of local government. So it's not actually on point, but I just wanted to give some frame to that.
Okay, we're now going to have a group hug.
No,
No, I'm just kidding.
Could you lead the first?
Mayor Paula.
thank you. I'm not going to comment on it, just say that all the committees are working so hard that it's really awesome in any case. Just in terms of I was wondering if you would like me to say a few words. I was wondering if you'd like me to say a few words about the Waikato show at some point, because I attended their trust meeting. We just started with there, didn't we? Sure. Was it? But in any case, I will declare, I suppose it's a light conflict of interest. I don't think it really is material, but I am a patron of the show, of the one show, of the Waikato Winter Show. I'm not on the trust or in any capacity a decision maker, but I'm happy to share some views and some intelligence that I got from attending their AGM of the Admiral Trust, the Waikato Show Trust.
Okay, maybe we park that for now, because I know Mark had some questions around that. Are there any questions specifically around the other items on the agenda? Councillor Rob.
And just a point, I couldn't make the link work to look at the policy, so I wasn't when I clicked on the policy, it took me to a page that doesn't exist anymore. So, so I haven't had a chance to read the policy, but I assume it's all kosher and follows other policies that we've got. But my question is, the paddle race from Cambridge, is that see, we are now sponsoring that. Is it co-sponsored with us in terms of Waipā District Council? Do they contribute some money to the funding of that?
I'll have to refer to the application. I don't have it in front of me, unfortunately, but I'm not too sure. I mean, our major reason for supporting that was two primary issues. One was our desire to really support anything working on the river, and so we can make it the most of the river. And secondly, in terms of Hamilton, quite often these things leave here and
don't come
end
back.
up in somewhere else. So,
Yeah, you know, I read that.
so that was quite a trip. I'm sorry I can't answer that question. I could go into my diligence and try to look through the document.
That's okay.
I think there was some money, but not.
Okay. And the company Boat Shed Kayaks Limited, is that a privately owned profit-making venture who are actually sitting behind?
Yeah, that's private.
Thank you. Those are my questions.
Any other questions from the floor? Councillor Maxine.
Just following on from Councillor Pesco's question, are we the only sponsors for a great deal of these events, are we?
No, we are one of multiple number of sponsors, and probably only one or two instances are we the major sponsor. So there's a number of other sponsors that sit alongside us in terms of value or higher, but no, we're not sole sponsor.
And just so in terms of that, if in the case of the two that we aren't supporting, it doesn't mean that they potentially won't go ahead with the plans that they have, but may look elsewhere.
They may well look elsewhere. I don't believe, which is part of our recommendation, that our absence from supporting them will change their ability to stay. They're actually an organisation required by legislation to undertake those events and are funded accordingly. So their request was for two specific activities on each event. But it was challenging for me to see how we could add value other than handing out some information.
Okay, I'm going to move the staff recommendation, so 3A to I with Councillor Wilson as seconder. I wonder if we go now to your questions or concerns, Mark, around the show, and we can maybe have that conversation.
I was just wondering, Sean, how much you can tell us regarding the show, because they've been pretty much, when it comes to this, consistent non-recipients. and I guess so eyebrows don't go up. Can you give us a bit of a background into your thinking around the Show Trust in this situation, as much as you can?
Yes, look, sure. I mean, twofold, I guess. One is, it is a show that's been going for tens, if not 20s of years, and it will always be held. It is a show that is backed up by a trust that, as I said, just is required under legislation to stage these events. And they have a sort of a high degree of funding from various sources coming in. And I just couldn't see how our engagement with it was necessarily going to add value to it, was going to increase participation, increase awareness, and especially increase, overnight stays and so forth. So it was just hard to stack it up against some of the other applicants, which we wanted to support for the sheer reason of criteria. But I mean, Mayor Paula may want to elaborate, but the trust is the Shows Trust is a very different beast to the bulk of the organisations that we do support.
Yeah, okay, because it was a pity, and that's why the questioning, I guess, it was a pity because it is an event that does bring people from the satellite towns to town. But Mayor Paula, maybe through the chair, could I ask Mayor Paula to talk about that meeting she went to with the Show Trust? If you're comfortable with it, or
I am.
Where's the
The
mic?
microphone.
So perhaps while the microphone's on, I could add that we actually also had in addition to the meeting that Mayor Paula attended, we had a conversation with the manager and to discuss my recommendation so that they're well aware of it. And what came out of that conversation was quite good points in terms of some opportunities perhaps for us to find other ways where we can support the shows and engage with them a bit more fully. And they also wanted to explore if there's some other ways that their organisation, which is quite substantial physically as much as anything, can actually support other event organisers, particularly in the community, because of the services and facilities they have in place anyway, with which to stage their shows. So it was a very good conversation, and I'm hoping that it will probably lead to some opportunities for a little bit more collaboration and perhaps a little bit more hubbing organisationally of some of the events where maybe they can share administrative services and supports that will actually help everyone's bottom line.
Great.
Thank you. So I did attend that meeting that Sean's talking about, which was very useful. And I think I'm not trying to persuade you to fund them at this point in time. I'm trying to give you some understanding of the organisation, because I think they accept on the face of it that they're not going to get any finance from us this time. And as Sean says, maybe we can help them a little bit with some of the management of the show to take their costs down on forward. The difficulty is here that the trust, the Waikato Show Trust, holds all the money that was gifted to the show for its continuity, right? So the Waikato Winter Show is not holding that money. It's the overall trust that administers both the AMP show and the show, well, under the banner of Showing Waikato, which is the two shows, right? The AMP show and what was traditionally the Waikato Winter Show. But the trust holds the money. So when you mentioned, Sean, the 11 million, I think it's about 7 million now, 6 or 7 now, because they've been hit like everyone else has. Their view is that they invest this in perpetuity and give out grants. So they do give a small grant each year to the two shows, but it's very nominal really against the cost of running something of that scale. It's less than 90,000 to some 80-something thousand. Which doesn't make it very easy to run a large scale show on. And the rest of the money, the trust feels they've got to keep it safe and invested and get a good return on it. But I challenged them in that meeting to say, what's the return for? They're currently lending the show some more money, so that will sit on the trust's book as debt, and the show has to try and pay it back from revenue at the event. But we know that these shows are really hard to make revenue off, and at this time during COVID, it's going to be even harder because some retailers who would normally sell their products won't be able to go to the show, and who knows what conditions COVID will impose upon them. I do feel sorry personally for the two shows, because I think they are trying to lift their game and create a really good product. In actual fact, in the last 4 or 5 years, we've seen significant improvements to the event. Cara from Waikato Winter Show is very helpful, and she's happy to work with Sean in respect to a number of things, like the dates they don't use it, making those available to Claudeland so that it's a benefit both ways. Because previous boards have been a bit precious about the days that have been allocated to them. My view is that their own overarching trust needed to, at their strategic meetings, start to consider why they hold their funds and how they use them for what purpose, so that they themselves can make it a bit more successful. But having said that, I would not be opposed to them getting a small amount, because I know that they are going to struggle to deliver anything like shows that we've had in the previous years. It'll be a very pared back offering. And with that, will that be the death knell of that eventually? I don't know. Have shows seen the end of their days? I don't know. I know that in Southland, the provincial show goes off with great guns. So it's all of that which we've got to consider. Do we want to have a Waikato show? Do we feel it's an important product? But, I'll leave that in your hands. But that's how it's structured, and I thought that was useful.
Yeah. And just one more question. Thanks, Mayor Paula. That was really helpful. And one more question on that, if you don't mind, Mr. Chair. That is, with COVID at level 2 at the moment, there's a chance that the winter show might not have even been able to crank along. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct. Like every major event organiser, everyone's waiting for level 1.
Yeah. And so if they were able to more satisfy council that the trust was potentially being a bit more helpful, or is there an opportunity for them to apply with some of the leftovers later in the year?
Look, anyone can apply at any time. Obviously, we would be fully subscribed based on the approvals we're putting forward to you today. Or very closely fully subscribed. I would just caution, we can never really guarantee, because this is a contestable fund, so people do have to compete for it. And we do have criteria attached to the fund. And as you've said before, and as we discussed previously, the blue lines are increasing between the fund for seeking some more economic benefit for the city versus purely local community and social benefit. So, and it's hard to try and work out which fits where.
Thanks, Mr. Chair, for your indulgence.
Is that you for now?
That's me for now. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Mark. Councillor Rob.
Thanks. Just following on from that, is it possible that we could consider either through this funding or other funding, following on from Mayor Paula's comments, and without wanting to be too overly oppressive with the show trust, whether we could help them with some funding towards some sort of strategic review that would allow them to look at why the A&P shows and winter shows in other parts of the country are going very, very well, and perhaps why in other parts of the country they're not going particularly well, and just see if there's a kind of a rebirth possible around how they could attract people to come back and fill up those two events that they've held for. I can remember them when I was a child going to the winter show and some show and so forth, and they were major events in Hamilton at that particular time.
So if I could respond to that, first of all, we don't have budget for that sort of an exercise. I think if you look at the organisation that's in place that physically run the two shows, yes, they would love that support. They would really welcome it and they'll embrace it. To be blunt, and if I can say this in my personal view, I don't think it would be of any value unless the overarching trust that holds all the money really, really wants to go down that track themselves and actually participate and have an open mind on how they manage their affairs. And once again, a personal view, if they really do feel that way, they can fund it. They don't need our money.
Thank you. Any other questions from the floor? I've got nothing on Zoom. So if there are no further questions, I will go to debate. Okay, I moved it. I've got nothing really to say. I think the conversation's been had. Councillor Wilson, a seconder, is there any debate? Okay, Zoom. We will go to the vote. Those in favour? Any against?
Carried unanimously.
Thanks, Sean.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. We're now going to go back to the flow of the agenda, sort of, which is item 11. Mike, the updated economic development agenda. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you, Chair. We're coming to you to present a refreshed economic development agenda that is backed up. Back in May, we brought to you a framework, an economic development framework that laid out, really with the emergence of this committee, where the council should be in terms of the economic development activity. That framework was then work was done around it and brought back, I believe in July, as a briefing to elected members to get your feedback on that framework. And really good, helpful conversation was had in that briefing. A lot of good insights. We then took those insights and then developed what we're calling a refreshed economic development agenda. Just to rewind a bit more, there was an agenda going back to 2012, and this is really to look at how do we re-engage, refresh that, and take it forward now that there is a committee to action upon some of those initiatives. So happy to take questions or go through in further detail.
Can I just add a couple of things? So, elected members, I would just add that following on from the conversation we had with Hamish Bell earlier today, that we have been talking to them over the last few months about the development of their new strategy, and the development of ours is very much aligned with that. And Mike and I and a handful of others have got a catch-up meeting with the Te Waka team in the next couple of weeks, now that once we've got this across the line, and Hamish and Te Waka have had their conversations with their stakeholders, to really lay down what that actually means in terms of who's doing which pieces. So my point really is just that we are working really hard on creating that partnership so that there is no double up of effort, and that we're pushing as hard as we can with the small groups of people that we've got in the space.
Mangai Ollie.
Thanks, Chair Ryan. Thanks, Mike, for the report. Just a comment and a question. A comment would be with the outcomes, maybe it's better if they put in the past tense, so it shows that they are to be achieved, or that they have been achieved. Those outcomes have been achieved. Second, my question is, and it fits what Jem was saying, is with the outcomes, which I think look good. I remember when we talked about this the first time it came to the committee, and we talked about capacity to deliver on these. I mean, with these outcomes, is there the capacity to deliver on all the outcomes at once, or will they be done in succession? What are your thoughts on that?
I would love to have the capacity to deliver all of it in the next 6 months, but Mangai Ollie, you're absolutely right in that we have to be very realistic about what is possible, which I guess, to my point about Te Waka, is why it's so important that we work closely with them, so that we are all pushing in the same direction. So Mike has worked really hard to kind of lay down in the economic development framework the actual work that needs to happen, and there is a succession to that work, which Mike might want to talk about a little bit more, but it really starts with laying that really strong foundation so that we can do what I call like the glory jobs, the stuff that looks and sounds cool and involves cutting ribbons, but in order to get to that point, we need to make sure that we've got that foundation really, really strong. So that's first cab off the rank.
Yeah, to that point, Magali, I think the real interesting part is we have an opportunity here to go back and build from the ground up a really strong, purpose-built economic development program that I haven't seen anywhere in the country. And I think with the support we've received thus far, being really targeted and specific, but then also one of the key pillars in the agenda, the in partnership part, speaks to some of what Jen just mentioned, but also including people like the Chamber, Tawaka, who was here, obviously, Jason, who was here earlier today, Vanessa from the CDD group. So really trying to make the most of people who are out there doing what I would call tangential economic development work, leveraging that and supporting it. But in the foundation and the framework of what we want to do moving forward is to spend the next 3 months very focused on that foundation and making sure that we are creating a platform for growth to then scale up as resources become available and as opportunities present themselves. A great example would be what Jason mentioned with the hotel. Some of that touches on economic development, partnering again with the CDD group, a refresh of that proposal and making sure that the right people know of the opportunities that we see here every day.
Thanks, Mangai. Is that you? Mayor Paula. Sorry, and then Councillor Ewan.
Thank you. Just looking at the one page, I like that it's all on one page. Just in terms of the box proactive and purposeful, when I read that, I didn't see any of those 3 points as actually being very proactive. So I just wondered what your view on that was, whether we could have at least one action that demonstrated more proactivity. I mean, telling the story, for what purpose though? Attracting business, we align our efforts with Tawaka, I agree with that. But for what purpose? It's just a little bit around the wording that is more to do with stacking up current approaches rather than, I'd like to see something that really framed the view that we will go out there and we will grab opportunity with both hands and we won't even wait for it to knock on our door and then open the door. We'll go and knock on their door and invite them in, that kind of thing. So I was just looking for, is there any way we can improve it in there? And then one other question is around the boundaryless approach. As soon as I read the word boundaryless, I thought, H2A, future-proof. But in terms of, which is fine, and they're the bullet point, but in terms of the words boundaryless, does it mean much to the wider community? I think the word boundaryless could be in the first bullet point. I wondered if the title could be something more plain language and, yeah, I don't know, I can't come up with a word on the top of my head, but I would like, I think it's very good actually, by the way. It's not, this isn't to pull it apart. Those are just the two thoughts I had. We need to be not aggressive, but a little bit more assertive in the space on the paper here. And I wondered if there's any ways to do that.
Absolutely, and I think what will come from this, pending some of the comments made today, is a more purposeful, and as Jen mentioned, a refresh of the framework that will have those quite specific action items. So under proactive and purposeful, taking on these ideas or I guess outcomes, and then building very specific, not just activities, but timeframes to achieve them, so that there will be that, I guess, more tangible product tied to those actions.
Yeah, I think we've got to really say upfront, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? All good.
Yeah, I think if I could just add to Mike's comment, I think that's sort of the next phase, Mayor Paula, would that be correct? This is just to kind of create, distill the sectors that we're targeting, and then from that there's going to be clear actions that will actually land on specific tangible things, which I think is to your point, Mayor Paula. Councillor Wilson.
No, you've summarised it perfectly. That's what I was.
Okay. Professor Dr. Sir Martin Gallagher.
Thank
Thank you. Just, and again, I'm going to need the chair's guidance. And as we move development strategy, I'm aware of obviously the relationships we have with organisations with whom we have an appropriate contractual relationship to Waka Central City Business Association. We have groups such as the Property Council, Chamber of Commerce, and I alluded to Chamber of Commerce's concern around elected members around the council perhaps not being business friendly enough or whatever. On the other hand, very interesting comments around shovel-ready projects, get that, some very constructive stuff. And the intent of my helpful question to you, Mr. Chair, is to see in terms of the role of this committee, if we have regular touch points with those other significant stakeholder organisations, so that in terms of our economic development agenda, we see where we have a common view together and where we may respectfully agree to differ. And obviously I'm aware of the deep expertise in the Chamber of Commerce, Property Council. You know, there's a resource there, which I respect, and I'm not expecting them to tell me what I want to hear. Feel free to bend my ear, but I'm just looking at how we could build on a constructive regular engagement with some of those identifiable key organisations, Mr. Chair. And I'm just wanting your views, or both your views, if I can ask you.
Yeah, I'd just say I completely agree, and I think it's a good question, and I think we've got to frame up how we might make that a touch point on a regular or semi-regular. So can we maybe think that through?
Yeah, and I mean, obviously I've discussed with you and the Deputy Chair, but it's just, I think I would just make the observation that I don't, you know, and I think it's quite a classic case. I don't want to just talk to an organisation by reading a newsletter, and it just seems to me that, again, we might agree to differ, but let's see where we can get it runs on the board.
Yeah.
And obviously I think I certainly acknowledge when I reflect on our LTP process, you know, for example, the Property Council, you know, some very good, and we agree to differ, but some very good, deep dialogue, which I think will help us.
Yep, agreed, noted. Any further comments?
I think they would welcome that engagement.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Okay, well, I'll move it. Seconded by Councillor Wilson. Any further questions? Otherwise, we'll go to debate. Fantastic.
Oh, so, okay. You say so.
Debate. 2 seconds. Really happy with the work that we've got to this point, team, and again, picking up Councillor Wilson's acknowledgements earlier of Mayor Paula and starting and seeding this. It's been a bit of a journey, and then COVID, and we haven't rushed into this. We've wanted to try and create a framework that's relatively enduring. And that's been my theme, whether it's, so we're not sort of talking 3-year cycles with politics. We need something that's robust enough and principle-based that will be enduring and ongoing for the benefit of the city. And I think we've landed on a framework now which gives us a focus, but it gives us scope to move and to really start to land on some things now. And the committee's really keen to land on some tangibles and deliver. But we had to get the framework right. And I think today, by approving this, it just continues us to enable that to happen. Mayor Paula. Oh, sorry.
Thank you. I just want to join in and thank staff, and also thank both your staff, Ryan and Ewan, for the work that you've done in here, because I can see that you're starting to strongly weave your influence through, and having that strong governance lens is vital. I think what's been achieved so far is very good. I'm looking forward to understanding who does what in terms of the actions. You know, want some really tangible actions, and I know you both do too, which we see delivered in the next short while, not, as you say, leaving everything till later or to accident, but doing it purposefully. So that's pretty exciting. The only one comment I was making, and it's not by way of any sort of criticism, but just my encouragement to be even more go-getters than as much as we can, because we are in competition. We're in competition with Auckland, we're in competition with the Bay of Plenty, and you know, and even other economies that have to redefine themselves a bit like Rotorua, you know, off the back of COVID. This is the best time for us to pave the way forward and you know, strengthen our own proposition.
Mayor Paul is cracking the whip. Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, look, thanks, Mr. Chair. Look, I fully support the work done so far. I think we have laid a really solid, concrete foundation for the future. I think we're beginning to form an understanding how we integrate Te Waka and Te Waka's role in a regional sense. That I think we're beginning to articulate very clearly that Hamilton Economic Development Committee is unashamedly Hamilton focused. And I see we are both with Councillor Ryan and the Deputy Mayor and Chair Rob working at how we can empower the endowment fund to be an amazing enabler of that go-getter message the Mayor has just given us. We're hearing it. We wanted it from day one. We knew that's what we were focused on. But Councillor Chair Hamilton was right in terms of let's get the framework right. Let's get those interrelationships right. Let's move to getting the endowment fund mechanism right. And we're nearly there today. And then that positions us to be really aggressive as a unapologetically Hamilton focused mission to go out and position ourselves as the head office of everything. That we're open for business, that if you're looking to relocate your business, we're interested, that we understand the current businesses here and their supply chains, and that we proactively go out and find complementary businesses that fit into the cluster of expertise. And so I'm excited because I'm hearing from the Mayor she wants action. I'm excited because I'm hearing from Chair Rob that we could probably get this endowment fund. Councillor Ryan has laid the foundation. This thing is coming together. The train is leaving the station, and we're all about to get on it.
Hopefully before March.
And well before March.
It's amazing how you packed so many political items into that one speech. It was brilliant. Any other further debate? Councillor Rob.
I just can't help but resist to say a few words now. Look, I think, I mean, I've lived in Hamilton for over 69 years now, and I can't think of a better time that Hamilton has now in terms of its own selling proposition. And we have opportunities emerging out of COVID. You know, we talked this morning about possibilities with the airport and what might happen in the airline industry if we are successful worldwide in moving the COVID thing out of our lives completely. So there are other propositions about Hamilton, our geographical location, our young population, our good tertiaries and schooling, our ease to get around. All of those things are attracting and will be attractors of bringing a labour force and businesses to Hamilton. So we need to be out there. I don't think council on its own can be the sole selling proposition, but we can be a very, very good enabler. And that means we have to be nimble enough to sit down with the business people and tell them that we're not local government of old, but we are local government new, and we're young enough and nimble enough to get out there and to sell exactly what Mayor Paula alluded to in her debate earlier about being there, cracking the whip, and doing the things that will bring permanent and better economic stability to the city. So I say I'm happy to crack the whip too, Paula, to move things faster.
It's Rob, the powerhouse Pascoe. He's in the house. All right. Anything else? We've moved, debated. All those in favour? Any against? Carried unanimously. Fantastic. We've got 3 items left. We might just have a quick 7-minute coffee tea break and we'll be able to close up the afternoon. Coming back on municipal endowment.
You're into 7-minute breaks. You know it's going to be 15. So I'm just going to call it 7.
You say 15.
It's 15. Yeah, that's true.
Others will speak dancing.
On Laura, I believe.
With Ollie.
With Ollie.
Oh, I always wear a costume with economic development. Oh, thanks.
All right, I'd like to thank ACDC for sponsoring the ABRA. All right, we're going to start with municipal endowment item, which is actually it was enclosed, but we pulled it out. So you might still find it in diligent under the PX. Item C2. Jen, are you introducing this or Sean?
Sean is. We need to go for it. Go.
Right, Wendy.
Good afternoon, councillors. We've got an opportunity, the committee's got an opportunity today to look at the splitting of the municipal endowment fund and the domain endowment fund from the current policy, take the better management and accountability of both funds. Currently, both funds sit under one policy, but they're governed by different pieces of legislation which don't necessarily have the same synergy to allow you to manage one fund in conjunction with the other fund in a probably better, appropriate manner. The main objective of the municipal endowment fund, as we know, is preserve the endowment fund capital and provide a assured source of income to be utilised for the purposes which the endowment.
Sorry, Wendy, I've just heard from Ollie, he's having trouble hearing. I'm wondering if, yeah, we can maybe use that microphone again, unless you can project really loud. So we're having technical troubles today. Thank you.
Would you like me to start again?
No, I think you're fine. As you were, from where you were.
Oh, okay, so we've got two funds at this point that are governed by different legislation, pieces of legislation that don't have quite the same compatible synergy. So at this point, the municipal endowment fund, we're trying to, it's there to promote better capitalisation of the fund in perpetuity and assured income, and to make sure it's utilised for purposes endowed, which is municipal purposes. The domain endowment fund is a totally different purpose altogether. Just of note, there's two things to be discussed here. One is the actual change in revision of the policy for the municipal endowment fund, and the second is the treatment of the accounting practices. This would normally sit with the finance committee, but the chair and principal advisor have allowed us to put this through to council directly instead of going to finance committee. So thank you, Councillor Rob, on that. Now, are there any questions?
Start with Councillor Rob.
Thanks. Yeah, just one question, Wendy, and thanks for the report. Is there a statutory requirement under the acts? So I think there's two separate acts, but particularly around the municipal endowment fund. Is there a statutory requirement that we separate out and report that fund in our financial statements, and that we keep a regular accounting of what the balance is in the fund?
There's a responsibility under the Local Government Act, Section 141, which says we must ensure that we account for endowment funds in the way they are entrusted. So there's probably very good reason to separate them out and ring fence it, so we can show that both income and expenditure are actually accounted for, and it shows the true status of the fund.
Okay, and so that's in the Local Government Act. It's not separate in its own act.
It doesn't sit within what the endowment fund requires. It's in the Local Government Act accountability.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and specifically the Local Government Act refers to the municipal endowment fund and the domain endowment fund.
No, it refers to endowment funds.
Oh, does it? Okay.
So the domain endowment fund has its own act, the Hamilton Domain Endowment Act, which is very specific.
Okay,
This municipal endowment fund is actually governed under the Local Government Act 2002 and is more generic, but it's required to have its own, should be clearly separated from the domain endowment fund.
okay. And the Domain Endowment Fund, as I recall, and having read your report, that sort of deals with land that's largely what we call leasehold land.
It deals with domain endowment land, and most of that is leasehold, and it's allowed, it's required under the Act that you lease it out, and that you give the lessees the opportunity to freehold that land. Then that money must come back into the reserve account to go towards promotion, development, and operation of recreation reserves.
So it has to be, the value has to be separately reported, and there's 11.5 million in the Domain Endowment Fund, and we do from time to time have owners of leasehold, property owners who have leasehold land who exercise their right to freehold that land. Is there a requirement for what we need to do with that money that comes in as a result of freeholding?
In the domain endowment fund, it's very specific under the Act. I'm actually bringing that to the next Economic Development Committee.
Okay, so I'll leave that
That will be
discussion.
completely covered.
Okay, I'll leave that discussion until then.
But municipal endowment fund has the same thing, it has leasehold interests, and the fund requires that if the lessees wish to freehold, that we give them that opportunity, and the money then goes back into the municipal endowment fund to be used for municipal purposes.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor Rob. I wonder if, Carmen, you could bring up, with, in terms of the staff recommendation, Ewan's moving it largely.
The recommendations on page 37.
Yep, just getting pulled up. Do you want to just speak to that? We haven't necessarily finished questions. I'll just get this on the table, and I want to bring clarity around your question yesterday, Councillor Rob, around that set of accounts.
Yeah,
Please.
and I'll signal that either I'd like to see B changed in the motion or signal an amendment.
I wonder if I'll just, yeah, no, we're happy to work with you on that. I think, Jen, do you want to just speak whether we're just talking at cross purposes on that piece?
Yeah, I wonder actually if this might be better, Sean covering this, but correct me if I'm wrong, Sean. But my understanding is this isn't an entirely separate set of accounts. It's about reporting it as its own entity with all of the revenue and costs all in one place, so that we can see the full set of how it's all working, as opposed to it being entirely pulled out of one set of accounts and set up as an entirely separate entity and requiring audit and that sort of thing.
That's what my motion is intending to do.
Cool.
I can just add, we have actually seen your amended motion, and it's perfectly acceptable, makes sense.
Sorry, can we get that back up again?
Yes.
I would add, while that's coming up, Chair, that I have spoken to David Bryant about it from an accounting perspective, and he supports. the-
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I hadn't heard that from
I've
you.
got an email here if you want to see that.
Councillor Ewan, did you want to just speak to this? We'll just get
Yes,
it order.
that, obviously in regards to B, I think we're agreeing that we would happily take Councillor Rob's indicated amendment to replace RB. And in regards to item D, that we're talking the delegated committee member 1 through to 4, and that we've got some names. If that would be helpful.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is perfect. Yeah, that's correct.
And just dropping off the PX element of it, given that we've moved out of PX.
Correct.
Okay, so we're still in questions. If there's any questions, I've lost Zoom. The report's fairly succinct, and Sean, just a few tweaks to the policy in terms of a refresh. Good. Moving out of questions, it's been moved, seconded by Councillor Pascoe. Mover of the motion, Councillor Young.
I'm just really excited that we're bringing this. A lot of work has gone on with the staff, and I thank the staff. I thank my elected colleagues for leaning in and helping shape this. Councillor Ryan, Councillor Rob. This is one of the strands that we need to put in play to enable Mayor Paula's comment about getting out and being more aggressive. So we're filling the arsenal. And we're loading it and we're ready to embark. And this will enable that to happen.
Councillor Rob has seconded. Do you have any comment?
Yeah. Look, I echo Councillor Wilson's comments. I think that this is a positive move. It's a requirement under the statute, as I understand, and I think we probably dropped the ball in the last term by moving the municipal endowment fund still within the body of the accounts, but taking away the its position in terms of recording and the word on transparency that it previously had. I think this is part of the journey. I would like to see a number of properties that are currently owned by council being transferred into the municipal endowment fund, so it won't require council to be specifically borrowing more money to shore the fund up. And I can think of a number of properties that would fall into that sort of fund as being strategic properties for future development in the city. And I see as a further step, and I hope that council in this term might support this, is that we look more seriously than we did in the last term at a form of CCO, a property company with some very skilled local people, and there are some skilled property people in Hamilton who most likely would like to participate and do some of the things that we did. This council did late in the last century, where we had hotels and some housing developments and so forth as part of Hamilton Properties Limited. So I see that as a next step, and I do hope that over the course of this term there will be interest, more positive interest than I saw last term, to bring that entity back into being, so that the skill base around property purchases and sales moves away from elected members who, for the most part,
and outcomes, which obviously should be appropriate economically, but trust me, I promise I do have an open mind, because obviously if that is the best way to do it, and then be so be it. But notwithstanding, I think, and I acknowledge I'm not a property developer. I don't have that skill base. But the skill base I have is to represent, I think, the aspirations of ordinary working folk who want to see a nice city and want to be part of a city, right? And it's got to be developments, if you like, that benefit everyone. I don't want another green school in Hamilton where it costs you $20,000 to attend, but forget the working class people, they're not on this one. I want to see developments that have a positive public good. Obviously, you know, there'll be investment, all right? And I do acknowledge, I think the property company under the chairmanship of former council and Deputy Mayor John Gallagher did some good stuff. I acknowledge that. But whatever this, I just want to thank you both, for those of you, Councillor Wilson and others who have brought us back to the plate on this, and that we can have a really good focused, focused, you know, to ensure that this fund achieves those good urban outcomes with economic development. And if the property company is the device, very open-minded.
Mayor Paula and then Deputy Mayor.
Well, I just thought easy going down.
I defer to you. No, I defer to you.
Thank you. Look, I just want to say that I support this, and I support much of the conversations we had. Two parts of this are really important to me. Thank you particularly to Councillor Wilson for the work in leading this and through your chairmanship, supporting it. The time, we're in strange times now. We're post-COVID, and never before have we needed all the tools we can bring to the table to stimulate the economy and the regrowth of our city. And so I think this will help us use the full potential of what we have to do that. Taking on board what Martin says, transparency and accountability are absolutely crucial from my point of view, and you know that because of the conversations we've had in respect to our involvement with the Waikato Theatre as well. And that's something I'll be unrelenting on. It's not our money, it's not our investment, it's the public investment we do on behalf. So we need to make sure that that's all in place, and given that that's all in place, I think we should go out boldly and find some good projects to get stuck into, things that will really change or will turn up the dial for Hamilton at a time when we really do need that to happen. Thank you. It's very formal, like I'm talking at a wedding or something. It is like a wedding. It is a wee bit weird.
Do you want me to play AC/DC again?
Yeah, look, I fully support these recommendations, which will allow us to use the fund for what it always should have been used for, and it's going to have a real impact on the development of the city. I congratulate Ewan for the impetus that he's brought to this term. He's really driven this, and he's been supported by his chair Ryan, because they understood, you know, there's a big opportunity cost in not using this fund for its purpose, for advancing the city, instead of just using it to stack up against debt. And I agree with Robin in regards to the way we used it in the last term, and so I'm really pleased. It was created for this purpose, and it's high time we used it for that. And Paul is right, in constrained financial times, it's one of the few tools that we can use to really help to deliver these developments that the city needs. And I think it will have a much more profound impact on Hamilton than just using it to offset debt is just a terrible waste, really. You look at the past results, you know, the Price Waterhouse building, the Genesis building, what we're doing with Wintec on Ward Street. It's about having a vision and actually having a tool to help you get that across the line. And obviously what we do with the fund is yet to be decided, and that's an important part of it. And the key is to have the strategy so we're not reactive, so we don't have people knocking on our door with nice, not enticing us with nice projects, and we're just responding to them. If we've actually got a vision and a strategy, then that's the key. So yeah, really happy to be part of it. And this is, I think, one of the most exciting bunch of recommendations I've voted on this term, so I'm really pleased.
Okay, I'll just say a few words and I'll hand back to Ewan of right of reply. Yeah, look, can't really say much more than what's been said, other than what excites me about this is it's a catalyst. It's an agent which is designed to spark interest or be the gap filler between someone that's holding back, a developer in the marketplace that's about to potentially realise, and just needs that leadership from council to step in and do it with an action plan that later we can pull out and celebrate like we've done in previous examples. So really excited. I think the next 9-12 months are going to be really exciting as we put this to the test.
No.
Okay, we'll go to the vote. Those in favour? Are there any against?
Carried unanimously.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thanks, staff. Okay, we've got item 12, Sean again, and then I think that's you for the day, Sean. And then we'll finish at item 14, and that's us. Yes, that wasn't open too.
Yeah, we were back in second under due diligence.
Yes, yeah. Page 137.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'll sort of skip through a couple of comments if I may. Picking up on the theme and attitudes that came through from some of the earlier presentations you had from external partners that we worked with, I want to assure you that the team at H3 has remained extremely optimistic and extremely positive in everything that we've been doing as we put ourselves through the COVID-19 experience. I do want to have my comments focus really not at all or very little on the past year. I want to really talk to you a little bit about the future because I think it's important to have an understanding of where we see ourselves placed moving ahead. In terms of the fourth quarter result and the year-end, financial year-end result, we, despite the fact that we effectively lost pretty much a whole quarter's worth of trading when we went into the first lockdown of COVID, we still exceeded our full year budget and operating level. We still had achieved revenue around 500,000 above our plan, which meant that we didn't quite have the pain that a lot of people have suffered by the end of the financial year. We also just scraped in with our attendance number. We had a target of 440,000 people, and we came in just over that. And that was driven by some large events that we did not foresee were going to come our way. One of those was obviously the HSBC sevens that we enjoyed and was not planned to come here. It would have been nice to have had another surprise this year or this coming season. We were actually on track for the fourth quarter before COVID to have an absolutely stellar quarter, mainly through business events, which is really where a big chunk of the economic spin-off comes from our venues, and unfortunately we lost that. Looking forward, our outlook still remains a little bit uncertain. In February earlier this year, as we saw the COVID thing starting to emerge overseas, and then in early March at this committee meeting, I advised that we were doing a significant recast of our operation in terms of our concerns over our revenue expectation, and we undertook a number of cost containment exercises right across the H3 operation. We also and recast our budgets for the current 2020-21 financial year, which was recently locked in as a part of Council's overall annual plan review. We removed a few of the projects that we were going to work on. Some of you will recall every year we try to focus on three big things as a theme, and we removed our aspirations to lift our game in security, sustainability, and some of our technology initiatives. They are going to come back to you, however, as a part of the new LTP. So yes, we talked about it this year in an attempt to curb our costs where we can because of our foresight for the year. Having said that, when we came back out of the first lockdown and we started trading again in July, for that month, first month of the new financial year, we actually exceeded our original budget targets. And that was a reflection on how quick people bounce back and how strong people that we deal with, our customers in particular, were in terms of wanting to get back into business. We are still seeing that. We were at one stage actually in early August looking at recasting our forward projections in our books to make a And we were debating whether or not we come to you with a slightly revised, more positive projection than the one we did. However, then the more recent level 3 and level 2 hit us, and that really knocked us a little bit for a 6. So it took the wind out of our sails in the short term, and so we have remained with our original revised budgets that we did way back in February, which we still think is conservative but sensible. The issue that we're finding, however, is that we've had cancellations for events that were going to happen during the level 2, level 3 lockdown, or just level 2. But most of our customers have actually pushed their arrangements or their bookings ahead. So if, for example, we went back into level 1 next week, we're all guns blazing in business events. So we have a Waters conference, for example, which we've been very nervous about and working very closely with our customers, 1,200 people over 5 days, all predominantly a large number from out of town. They've now rescheduled, and we've been rescheduling month after month after month, and they finally locked and loaded for November. So we are praying that we'll be in level 1 in November and not a constrained level 1. And that is one example that demonstrates all of our customers that we have, they want to get back into business too. It's not just us. They really, really want to get back into business for a whole variety of reasons moving forward. So it gives us sort of heart that we will bounce back. The major exception to that is the big sports events. We are daily, if not weekly, in close contact with all of the major sports organisations at international level, and we are open and ready for business with them. But they have a whole lot of things to work out themselves, let alone which venues they may or may not come to. So I want to assure you that we're not just sitting back waiting for notification from central government to those organisations as to what they can do or can't do. We're actually working with whatever influence we have with Wellington to put the case. We're working with those organisations to help where we can. And I'd like to think we'll be in a good position to respond quickly if things do open up for us. During the lockdown, we kept ourselves very busy, and I think one of the key things that we did make a decision on right up front during the big lockdown was that all of our business development team would stay full, would have full court press or fully engaged with our customers throughout lockdown. Now, what that meant was a lot of work and a lot of contacts and everything else. And it meant that we were putting a lot of time into shuffling bookings around, moving them forward. And I think that has paid off in terms of how our relationships have remained intact and how our bookings have remained intact. We didn't take the pressure off during COVID and not turn up. As soon as we came out of the first lockdown and were able to fly, our business development team for business events actually went and visited every single customer. And that was part of our dedication to say we are there for them and we're there to get business back as quickly as we can. And I'd like to think that that will happen. If our optimistic outlook comes to fruition, we are going to struggle to deliver to the business we've got on the books for the balance of the financial year. We head into level 1. So that's just a comment for you, so you have a bit of an idea of how I see ourselves with the financials. Looking very optimistic. We're working hard to keep the business going. One of the things that you might have picked up with a couple of things I've been saying over the last few weeks or months and in the report is that all of our team at H3, under the circumstances, have remained extremely busy. But they've also been very aware of what a privileged position they've been in, because all of the people that they work around, because bear in mind we're quite a small team for the scale of what we have, and we use a lot of subcontractors to be as variable in our costing. But all of those subcontractors and all of our customers that we deal with, the people that we've been dealing with, have lost their jobs or have been put on hold or put on ice, if you like. And so our team have been extremely conscious of that, and they've been extremely conscious that the work, and they probably reinforced more than they quite realised before, how much our businesses do generate in terms of downstream economic activity, jobs, and so forth. So that's where our team have had this phrase, which might sound a bit twee, about getting jobs back to our base, because we really know now that if we get our business back online and back coming up, that jobs are going to come back for all those people that have been affected, whether they're downstream immediate suppliers who we work with customers, and also all of the downstream businesses out there in Hamilton that provide services at one level or another. And we saw that when we had the Super Games come back, for example. Suddenly there was a whole lot of people that have been out of work for a long time were activated, admittedly only for a few days when one event was already a good example. So with that, I think I should go quiet, but happy to take any questions.
Okay, in terms of receiving the report, Ollie's going to move it. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Wilson. You have 2 questions. Mayor Paula.
Just looking at those, like those bar charts with the portion of business and events.
Sorry, essentially, oh yeah, okay. I'm just looking at those graphs that have the proportion of what's in what type of business. Just trying to find the page now. I always like those. Now it shows that business is still a stronghold largely, although some of that dropped off. How much capacity do we still have in the business market to?
So what page are you on, Mayor Paul?
I'm just trying to find it now. I'm just scrolling. Another one about blocks of different colour.
151.
151. I've gone past it.
It's 3.3 in terms of the section number.
Oh, not that one. 3.3. Sorry. Yeah, we'll just go to 3.3. Thank you. It's on the end of the page, that's why. Okay, so that business mix by event type, and then we've got volume and revenue and so on. And business is the purple, so it's always been a strong holding, but it's a big volume and it's an important part of the revenue. So given that going forward, we can still build on that reputation as being the business focus. We've still got quite a bit of capacity to go out and be, there we go, get the proactive word again, around business events?
Yes, we absolutely do. I mean, having said that, we know that in October, November, and early December, we have some real pressure points. So we do have some days where it's quite tricky, and part of the juggle that our business development team do is how do you stack everyone up? How do you schedule one booking after another, and make it sort of fit? So that's where a lot of our work has been at the moment, and we will have some very tight turnarounds. You then exacerbate that by, if we have impact events where they want to take the arena out and something else, then we make it work. But the overall capacity we have, irrespective of this current adjustment that we're going through, is still very good and very strong. I'm not, quite some time before I came to this council and said, hey, we need another conferencing room, or need more capacity, because we still have plenty of capacity to feed, especially if you spread it out over a year. We always have peaks that cause us problem, but we can't cater to just 1 or 2 peaks during the year.
No, yes, and I see that in comparison the exhibit, because this doesn't change all that much, does it? This mix.
Yeah.
The exhibition is a large part of volume, a large number of days, large number of attendees, I should say.
Yeah,
but
correct.
The revenue is not as good, not as strong as it could be.
I mean, at the end of the day, the business events activity is also, it's not just a bigger revenue portion for us, but it is probably the bigger driver of economic spin-off benefit for the city in terms of visitor nights and visitor spend. It probably drives proportionally quite a bit more. Admittedly, some of the big impact events like the Sevens event or an All Blacks Fest drives a fair amount as well. But business event is much more steady state and better spread across the city.
So just in terms of the future being as uncertain as it always is at the moment, your team are working on how you can run events differently so that you have the right number of people in the right number of space, etc. Set things out differently, etc.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And when we came back in July, we had been doing a lot of work during lockdown to prepare ourselves for how we operate differently. But of course, we then came out of lockdown and we could go back to normal, which was a bit of a shock and surprise to us. The last few weeks, however, while we've been in this latest level 2 lockdown, we have still been holding conferences or small meetings and sessions there, and yes, seating, so we've got seating separation and different ways of moving people in and out and how people mix them. So we've got that pretty well covered. Having said that, I have tasked the team with a further review on the whole sanitisation program for our venues, and we lifted the bar a fair amount. However, I've taken a bit of a lead from some things we've seen happen overseas, where we want to actually campaign a lot more to our customers about the safety of our venues from a sanitary point of view. And so we are looking at lifting further some of the measures and some of the things that we do in the venue to increase cleaning and so forth. And that will also apply to, equally apply to the arena, at Coolmans, equally apply to FNG Stadium, the seats. And there are measures that we can do to lift that. And what we want to do is do it because it's the right thing to do in the new world we're in, but also do it because our customers want some, assurances and, some attention to it. And, so we're working on that now. So whether it's more smoke machine applications or ultraviolet cleaning or some of the different technologies that we don't use now, we use some in part, but not always.
Excellent.
That's what we're working on.
So we could potentially go out in the end and say, we've got this SUS, we've got the spacing SUS, we've got line management SUS, spacing SUS, any of the SUS company in. That what because this is happening, this might happen again, another virus, another thing.
We have it sussed now. What we're required to do, what we're saying, what I'm saying is we want to take it to another.
Okay, thank you.
You know you're in New Zealand when you hear the word sussed 5 times in 30 seconds.
Did I say it, SUS? Did I say it?
Are there any more questions? Okay, it's on the table, moved, seconded, and debate.
No.
Those 4.
Just very quickly then.
Yep.
Yeah, just to say, thanks.
Just to say on that, just to reset why I was asking those questions, is I think in the whole national scene and maybe not Australasian in the long term, etc. If we can demonstrate best practice, we've demonstrated best practices facilities anyways, but now we're in a different world. And if we can demonstrate and market, like you say, Sean, the fact that we know what we're doing when it comes to these unique circumstances, I think they can only stand in our favour. But I think we have to be reasonably quick about doing that because other people are seeing and exploiting the opportunity of being the best at dealing with COVID or whatever comes next. And so we should cement that as soon as possible and say, Hamilton's it's a safe place to come hold your event and this is why.
Sussed. All right.
Sussed.
Item 14. Sorry, I didn't vote on that. Did we got the vote?
I think Ollie wanted to speak in the debate.
Apologies, Ollie. You moved it.
No, I'm happy. No right to reply there, Chair Ryan.
Okay. Is there any against? None.
Carried unanimously.
Fantastic. Item 14, 173. Jen.
Just going to take the reports as read, and if there are any questions, happy to answer them.
I'll move. Seconded, Councillor Rob. Going to debate. Any against? Carried, unanimous. Lovely.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone for your support. Have a great day.
Mr. Chair, I just wanted to congratulate Stafford for these economic updates that he's still been working on. I found them, sorry I was a little late in saying that, but I for one really appreciate it. I saw 6 of my colleagues join us yesterday. They're insightful, they're helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Very good.
Brilliant.